Well, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Michelle Bean, and this Zoom recording is a brief overview of CBD and the endocannabinoid system. And you're probably receiving this video because someone reached out to you and was wondering if you were interested in learning more about CBD, or you reached out to somebody who you know has the information and they sent you this video. So I'll just tell you briefly, I've been doing some research on CBD and cannabis and medical marijuana for about the last year, maybe year and a half now. And I put together this PowerPoint presentation that I've been doing now for about 4 months. And it's turning out that people are asking questions. It just, for me, the timing was right because I had a very personal experience with CBD and THC and cannabis in my mom. And what I'm learning from doing these educational talks is that people are asking questions. CBD is the topic of conversation right now. A lot of people are hearing about it. People are experiencing tremendous benefits from it, and we all want to know why. So I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I can. Wish me luck when I start talking about something that I really enjoy. The problem is that I just keep talking about it. So I've narrowed the entire presentation. I'm going to go through it as briefly as I can. And what I would say is when we get to the end of this, if you want more information, I do have a longer one that really gets into the nuts and bolts and really scientific work around some of the information that I'm going to tell you. But you can also reach out to the person who sent you this video to get more information. So let's get right into it. Let's see, I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm looking at here. There it is. All right, so CBD. So again, the topic of conversation. A lot of people are looking into it. We want to know what it is. So the entire word is called cannabidiol. And the reason I put endocannabinoid system, I know that's a big word, but I'm going to break it down so that you really understand what that is. But in order for us to talk about CBD, we have to understand cannabis a little bit. So really, I want you to understand cannabis and marijuana have been around for a very, very long time. You know, thousands of years. The last documented case I have here, 5,000 years. But the last documented case in Southeast China was about 25,000 years ago. And right now it's extensively being used in Israel, Asia, Africa, you know, all around Europe, and slowly, you know, coming into America, you know, and hoping that information like this and you people out there looking for the information is going to continue the discovery of what cannabis is. So to talk about cannabis, we have to talk about the cannabinoids. So cannabinoids are an active component of the cannabis plant. So really what you need to understand about the cannabinoids, it's just an extraction. It's an oil that you can get from the cannabis plant. And the two first cannabinoids that were discovered were in 1960s. So the first one was THC. It was first isolated in about 1960 something, and shortly after was CBD. So we know THC is the psychoactive component, and CBD is one of the non-psychoactive components. But since then, we have discovered about 150 other cannabinoids and still researching all of these different cannabinoids. Again, just an active component. The reason we talk a lot about CBD and THC is because they're found in high ratios in the plant. In this country, THC, as you guys know, has been bred for high levels of THC, but the plant hasn't always been naturally bred that way. It has actually found natural, the cannabis plant, with high levels of CBD and low levels of THC. But as we're beginning to study this plant, we're understanding and looking at what CBD does in particular. And you can see in this screen here, there's so many different influences that CBD has in the body. Antibacterial, inhibits cancer cell growth. It's a neuroprotectant, means protecting the brain. Promotes bone growth, you know, so people who have bone issues or surgeries or fractures, really helps with bone growth, osteoporosis, blood sugar levels. It just goes on and on and on. And so that's why we're talking about CBD, because it's influencing so many different parts of the body. So in order to really understand CBD and the cannabinoids, we have to understand the endocannabinoid system. So here I'm going to throw a lot of words at you. You can write them down or just listen, but I'm hopefully going to explain it well enough so that you can understand all of this terminology. So again, cannabinoid, endo means endogenous. It means our body makes it. Cannabinoids, again, they just used the same word from the name of the plant, the extraction, because they found the plant extractions, the active components first, and then they started looking to the body. So when they discovered receptors, so in 1988, they discovered receptors in our brain and central nervous system for what's called CB1 receptors. So these receptors directly bind the cannabinoids. This is a really, really huge discovery. CB2 receptors are predominantly found in the immune cells and the immune organs. So the immune cells that travel through the blood system and then all the different immune organs. So the spleen, the thymus, the tonsils, bone marrow. But the reason this is such a big discovery and a really, really, really big deal is because we don't have receptors in our brain for any other thing that it's an extraction from an outside source. For instance, we don't have receptors in our brain for omega-3s. Okay, we don't have receptors in our brain for vitamin C. We don't have receptors in our brain, for your B complexes. None of those supplements that you can take outside directly bind and influence the brain and the immune system the way that these cannabinoids do. That's a really, really big deal. And that's why there's so many different influences that cannabinoids are having, or cannabis is having in the body. We can think of, so with the discovery of these receptors in our brain and in our central nervous system and our immune system, and then also the two receptors are found in different ratios throughout the different organ systems as well, but predominantly brain and the immune system. So with this discovery, you can think of it kind of in terms of system-wide effects. So you know that we have a nervous system, right? And we know that we have an endocrine system, which is our hormone system. We have a cardiovascular system. We have a lymphatic system. Think of the endocannabinoid system as something that influences the entire body. And the more we study it, the more we understand that the whole purpose of this endocannabinoid system is to bring balance to the body. So that's called homeostasis. That's balancing out the body. So quieting down areas of the body or the brain that are overactive and really turning on areas that aren't working, that are sluggish and just aren't functioning, and bringing balance back to the body. So this is a really, really big deal. They've discovered these receptors in every vertebra that has been tested to date. So 600 million years old these receptors are. They've been in our system for a very long time. And again, to understand that we have things in place to bring balance back to the body so that when the body starts to go out of control or starts to slow down, we can pick it up and bring balance back. I'm going to talk about three main things. It's neuro, endo, immune modulators. Again, I know that's a really big name, but what I want you to understand really is the influence that these cannabinoids are having on our nervous system. So that's the neuro part, the endocrine system, which is our hormones, and then the immune system. So endocannabinoid receptors are the biggest class of receptors in our body. It is just so extensive and so important that the discovery of these receptors has really lit a fire under the research world to really figure out what's happening with this endocannabinoid system. So let's talk about a couple of things. So the next thing that we have to understand is if we have, so the first discovery was the cannabinoids, right? So we discovered THC and CBD, and then all the other cannabinoids. Then we discovered the receptors in the brain, central nervous system, and the immune system. The next question is, if we have these receptors that have been around for 600 million years, we've evolved with this in our body to bring balance back to the body, we must have chemicals that we make endogenously or in our body that act functionally the same way as those cannabinoids do. And the answer to that is yes, that is true. So they're called endocannabinoids, endo again meaning endogenous or something that the body makes itself. And then the cannabinoids, they're just sticking with that same name from the plant extract, the cannabinoids. So there's two main ones that we're going to talk about briefly. One is anandamide. That is short or Sanskrit for bliss. So anandamide considered the bliss molecule. So a lot of studies showing how anandamide directly influences those CB1 receptors in the brain. So it acts kind of like a neurotransmitter. And what a neurotransmitter does is it's kind of produced on demand, and it binds these receptors, and it makes a direct influence on the brain. So anandamide, one of our endogenous neurotransmitters that helps bring balance back to the brain and central nervous system in a very big way. So one of the beautiful things about anandamide that I really like to talk about is that it's found in chocolate. Right? So that makes complete sense that we really love our chocolate, right? Because it's given us that blissful, like, I'm eating chocolate. And I always tell people, as long as you're enjoying eating your chocolate and you're not feeling guilty or beating yourself up for it, then you're going to get a double whammy. You're going to really build those levels of anandamide in your blood. So it's also been shown to be produced on meditation, and definitely responsible for that runner's high, changing the way the different endorphins are being released in the body. So that's anandamide. The next one is called 2-AG. So 2-AG, considered somewhat the motivational molecule. It acts very much like I said that the anandamide acts kind of like a neurotransmitter, so direct influence. 2-AG acts more like a neuromodulator. So all that means is that it's getting into the system and coordinating a bunch of different processes in the brain, in the central nervous system, and just throughout the body. Kind of a regulatory modulator is what it does. It's found in breast milk. It's found in all animal milk, and also found in breast milk. So transferred from mother to child. Again, kind of that motivational. And I like to talk about this. One of the ways that they discovered how it's influencing the body is they can take these receptors for the 2-AG, and then they block that receptor. And what they discovered is it takes away or it removes that suckling mechanism. And not so much that the animals can't suckle, they choose not to. They have everything in place, it functions just the way it's designed to. It just, they lose the desire to thrive. And so they lose that suckling mechanism, which is their main instinct as little animals. So really big deal thinking about like that we have this main modulator, the 2-AG in the system, that goes in and modulates a bunch of different physiological processes in the body. And then you have our own anandamide influencing major changes like directly in the brain. So we have these systems in place. The idea is like, how come they're not functioning as well as we want them to? Or how can we enhance them so that they can do the things that they were designed to do in the body? So this is the way CBD works. This is why CBD is such a big deal. We used to think that CBD directly binds these receptors that I was just talking about. It turns out that CBD has just low affinity, which means it doesn't have a strong binding capacity for them. What it does is it gets into the system and it conducts. You can think of it as this main conductor, like it's standing in front of like this main orchestra of transmitters and hormones and signaling patterns and gene expression, and it's orchestrating this beautiful physiological process trying to bring the body back into balance. This is why CBD influences so many different levels, physiological processes in the body. It's called a neuromodulator, again, modulating different systems. I want to talk about three things briefly. Let's see if we can get through this quickly. Increasing endocannabinoid tone, gene transcription modulation. I'm going to explain these words to you, so don't get lost yet. It's coming. And then stabilization of neuroinflammation, which means brain inflammation. So three of the main things. One, endocannabinoid tone. So the tone just means you can think of it maybe in terms of volume. You know, is the volume up loud, like way too loud, like crazy loud, or is the volume down and you can't even hear it, right? And think of those in terms of anandamide and the 2-AG, right? Are we listening? Do we have the capacity to use these, or are they overactive? What we want to do is clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. So Dr. Ethan Russo has a really great article, a couple of different articles, talking about the deficiency of the endocannabinoid tone in the body and how we can actually turn this on. So a lot of the studies, what they're showing is when you mix CBD, when you get CBD into your system, it turns on and enhances the levels of our own endocannabinoids. That's a really, really big deal. What it does is it prevents the breakdown of anandamide, so you get a pooling effect. You get more of the influence of anandamide, and then it turns on the pathways that spark the 2-AG to really turn those on. So CBD is allowing our body its own processes to work better, And when you bring that into the system, it's kind of like an aid. It helps the body work a lot better through the endocannabinoid tone. That's a big deal for using the things that we've been naturally given. The second thing I want to talk about is gene transcription modulation. Big word. I got this particular picture here off of Project CBD, another really great resource if you're looking for more information. But what I can tell you about, what gene transcription modulation means is we have genes, right? And genes are the blueprint. That's all it is. Genes give us information. But unless we actually do something with that information, then the genes just sit there. So the genes have to be transcribed or read is the way we can look at it. So we have to read the genes. And the modulation means we're deciding how and which genes are going to be read. So without getting too complicated, what I can say is that the main effects that CBD is having on the system is it's turning on, it says here, upregulating the glutathione pathways in a very, very major way. Glutathione, if you haven't heard of it, is a main antioxidant and turning on all these different pathways that help detoxify the body. It's also turning on all of our anti-inflammatory processes. So this is a really big deal because of all the systemic and cyclic inflammation that we have. Inflammation drives pain, drives processes in the brain, the Parkinson's and the diabetes and all of these Western diseases that are coming out because of this chronic inflammation. So CBD gets in there and it turns on all of the genes that stop that, that increase anti-inflammation in the body. So really important information here. And you can kind of think of it in terms of, let me give you an example of why this is such a big deal. If we think of it in terms of cancer, okay, there's a lot of cancer research out there right now. And the way that this really works is, let's say we have our cells, right? And inside the cells, we have DNA. And then we understand, like within the DNA, when the DNA unfolds, we have the genes. And the genes have sequences. They're very specific sequences. And depending on what the signal is, we get a signal, and the signal looks for a certain part of the gene. And when it notices it, it reads that gene. And then it produces like a protein, and the protein goes off and does whatever that gene told it to do, right? So there's mutations in the genes. So sometimes when the genes unfold, we get mutations in the gene, and we have, our immune system is designed to have molecules in there to pretty much go through and scan the genome for these mutations. But what happens is when we have a high sympathetic tone in the body, so sympathetic is the fight or flight, so high anxiety, the quick lifestyle, all of the toxins that are coming in and turning on the sympathetic system. What happens is when our sympathetic system is on, our immune system shuts down, so it doesn't function. So we no longer have these molecules that can come in and scan the genome and quickly remove that part of the genome. So what happens is when we have that mutation in the genes, the mutation for cancer is proliferation, which means out of control cellular growth. So this mutation shuts down the function of that particular cell. And what it does is, all it does is grow and grow and grow. And it continues to receive these signals from the outside, which are mainly toxins, and inflammation and, acid alkaline imbalances. There's a lot of different signals that will come in and continue to read that same signal for proliferation or for cell growth. What CBD does is, it's beautiful. It comes into the system. I'm going to simplify this. There's many different pathways that do this, but for simplicity's sake, CBD comes in, it overrides that signal, and instead of reading the gene for proliferation, it finds another gene that is for cellular apoptosis, which just means natural cell death. So it closes down that cell dies, and all the surrounding cells does the same thing. CBD comes in, it overrides the signal, those cells shut down, and it doesn't affect any of the cells around there that don't have that same signaling pattern. So really finding ways to bring the body back into balance. Over 500 different pathways have been discovered now that CBD comes in and turns on, and like 300 or 400 different pathways, gene expression pathways that are shut down, again, to bring benefit and balance to the body. This is a major, major area of research and discovery right now, because that's a big deal. What we're saying is that CBD is changing the expression of our genes in a beneficial way to bring the body back into balance. Big deal. Big deal. So I wrote a couple things on the side there. You can look up this article right here from the British Journal of Pharmacology, and you can read that article. But really, the major effects on the oxidative stress, that's a big deal in our society right now because of all the toxicity. We have to be able to detoxify the body. CBD is having a major influence on that detoxification pathways. Also down-regulating these cyclic inflammatory cytokines that process through the body, really hard to shut that down. CBD is coming in and shutting it down and then turning on all of our anti-inflammatory processes. So really setting the stage in a major, major way for balancing out the body. The last thing I want to talk about is brain inflammation. So what's happening is there's all these triggers. There's receptors in our brain that are called NMDA, or they're glutamate receptors. And first discovery, the first time I heard about this was Russell Blaylock's book. It's called Excitotoxins, The Taste That Kills. I think it's a 1997 copyright. And that's the first time I heard about it. But MSG getting into the system, glutamate, and these glutamate receptors are excitatory. But they're so excitatory when they're completely bombarded that they excite themselves to death. Really. And so MSG is one of those triggers, but we now know there's so many other triggers that can do the same thing. Concussion, if you haven't seen the movie Concussion with Will Smith, take some time to really look at that. That's another way that we're getting this chronic brain inflammation is through these multiple concussions, or even just one. But there's a lot of other ones. There's mercury, glyphosate, that's Roundup. So if you've ever had anything that is non-organic, you're a candidate for this. The Lyme disease toxins, the bacteria that's released from the Lyme disease is a major trigger. Mold is a major trigger. EMF, so if you have electromagnetic frequencies anywhere around you, which, I think we all have that. If you have a cell phone and you have internet, which is a wireless internet, then you're a candidate for this. So a lot of different ways to trigger this, but basically what happens is we have these, they're called microglia. You don't have to know that, but they're immune system cells in our brain, and with all of these different triggers, it releases toxins into our brain and it damages the cells in the brain. And so the brain cells die, or they're damaged, and in response they release other chemicals that go on and trigger that immune system cell again. And so it's just the cycle that happens that's very difficult to stop. And what we understand with CBD comes into the system just like it did all the other pathways, and it's shutting that down. It's quieting, that inflammation in the brain. Inflammation in the brain, very subtle sometimes and very loud other times, but it starts with kind of this anxiety, this brain fog, fatigue, lack of motivation, like not sure what's going on, anger, depression. And that's the low level of it. A lot of us exist on that level and we think, oh, well, this is just common. This is the way it's supposed to be. But a lot of us, because of our food, because of the toxicity in the environment, we have this low level brain inflammation. Some people, it's really loud, really, really loud. So the concussions, the multiple concussions, autism, ADD, ADHD, Parkinson's, a lot of these different things are just chronic and really loud in the brain. So knowing that CBD can get in there, and really CBD does that by modulating the 2-AG. So it's really our own endogenous center. CBD goes into the system and it also modulates stopping this inflammation. But a huge part of it is by turning on our own systems. So that endogenous cannabinoid that we talked about earlier, the 2-AG, is the one that's going in and doing it. So it's really bringing our body back into its ability to do what it was designed to do. It's beautiful. All right, so quickly I'm going to go through a couple of these. What I would say is if there's something that you're really interested in knowing if it's going to help or if it aids in a certain particular disease or an ailment that you have, I would say look it up, Google it. I'm not going to talk too much about all the different systems. I'm just going to briefly go through them so that you know there's a lot of information out there. So gastrointestinal and digestion, a lot of work around eating disorders, bringing the body back into balance, the hormone signaling patterns, reduces nausea, a lot of work around Crohn's and obesity and diabetes, irritable bowel, leaky gut. There's a lot of information out there how it's really fixing and correcting a lot of these issues. Liver, again, we talked about the liver. This is a huge one for CBD, turning on these antioxidant pathways that we have in our liver so that we could begin to detoxify the body from all the tremendous toxins that are bombarding our body. Really helps with the prevention and accumulation of fats around the organ systems. So another way that we can really combat liver disease. Pain management, this is a huge one. A lot of study around pain, because we understand how well it works for pain and inflammation and antioxidation. If you see right in the middle there, affects the perception of pain. So this is huge, the ability for CBD to get into the system and affect the way we're experiencing pain in our brain. But it's not doing just that, like we talked about before. It's turning on anti-inflammation, shutting down the inflammatory processes that drive pain. So it's doing this on so many different levels. People are experiencing really, really, really good results with their CBD. Mental health, there's so much work around mental health right now. Alcoholism, opiate withdrawal. This is what happened with my mom. She had a full spinal surgery about 1.5 years ago. And after being 20 years in chronic pain and these major like full spine surgeries, the fear was because she was on so much medication that they weren't going to be able to control her pain. And that was actually true. And so very devastating for her. So what I did is I started administering different levels of CBD, to her. And what happened is within 1 week of her surgery, when we started taking this medication, her pain level went from a 10, which is where she constantly lived, to within 1 week down to a 0 to a 1, and then within a 6-week period, she dropped from 10 to 11 different medications down to 4. So we pulled 6 or 7 medications off her shelf after 6 weeks of being on different tinctures in different dosing patterns. But what happened was all of her medicine started working better. So she was able to take less of it, which is part of that opiate withdrawal pattern. So you don't need as much because it's working better. But then not only that, but your own systems are working better, right? Turning on all of these pathways, quieting down the overactivity in the body, allowing the body to come back into balance. Really, really huge pathways that are being expressed here. So there's a lot of work being done around depression, phobias, schizophrenia, anxiety, PTSD. Again, anxiety, one of those very first factors involved in brain inflammation, really starting to quiet that down. There's a really, really great documentary. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's called Weed, W-E-E-D. Started in 2012. It's a 3-part series. I think the next 2 were in 2014. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, worth looking at. They talk a lot about the childhood epilepsy and seizure disorders. They do another thing around cancer, another thing around PTSD, really studying the vets that are coming home after war and the trauma that they have and how CBD cannabis is really influencing all of those systems. A lot of work around brain health, so neurogenesis, regeneration of new brain cells. We've been told for years that this isn't possible. That's not true. It is possible. It's being shown. Brain plasticity just means changing the pathways into the brain, like we talked about, like the pain pathways, changing it, really understanding that we're going to perceive it a little bit different, but working on many different parts. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, migraines, seizure disorders, changing in the levels of serotonin and dopamine and their receptor. Neuroprotective, there's so many different things. I just put this in here so that you can see all of the different ways that they're looking at in so many different countries. The one on the top there, that's coming out of Brazil, the epilepsy, it's a 2012, looking at epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, bipolar disorders. This is a 2005, and this is a review and discussion. We've been looking at this for a very long time. Schizophrenia, cancer, inflammation. This one I pulled off a leaflet, you can see here. A little bit brighter after all of that information. So I know that that's a lot of information, but just look in the middle there. You can see gastrointestinal disorders, mood and behavior, neurological. We have pain and sleep and other, and then on the outside, all of the different ways that it's really influencing all of these diseases. Arthritis, fibromyalgia, spinal injuries. They're looking at HIV, fatigue, like so many different areas there. And in the middle of that, you see the different cannabinoids, right? So there's all the different cannabinoids. And I think the really important thing to understand is that even though we're looking at CBD as this main conductor, right? It's orchestrating these major pathways in the body. We have to remember that it's not doing it alone. So CBD can't conduct if it has nothing to conduct, right? So understanding that CBD works synergistically with all of these other cannabinoids. So really important when you're looking for a good CBD source, you want to know that they're using a full plant extraction, or at least getting a large majority of the cannabinoids into the into the oil so that they can work synergistically with the other cannabinoids, right? What's the fear in this country is that we're going, because we understand the value of CBD, is that we're going to start plucking it from the plant alone and not using all the synergistic effects of it. Or we're going to start synthesizing it, and that's actually happening already. Synthetic, genetically modified CBD, which is kind of counteractive to what it's actually designed to do, right? So making sure that we're understanding that when you're looking for a good CBD source, that you're getting something that's organic, right? So that it doesn't have any pesticides, fungicides, herbicides in it. You want to make sure that it's not genetically modified, and you want to make sure that it has a good spectrum of other cannabinoids in it. So if it's just CBD, you're just not getting that full effect that you can actually get from it working synergistically with the other ones. This is the product that came into my lap about probably 4 months ago, and it's no surprise to me because I've been doing so much work already around the endocannabinoid system and CBD and THC and cannabis. And people would come to me and I used to send them to the dispensaries because that's where they're going to get their information. It turns out now that as long as we can find a good quality CBD that has very, very low THC, this is legal in all 50 states. So the legal requirement right now in the United States is as long as it's less than 0.3, maybe it's 0.3 or 0.4% THC, then you can use it as a dietary supplement, because CBD and all the other cannabinoids are non-psychoactive. It's not going to mess with the brain at all. If anything, it's going to enhance and heal the brain on so many different levels. This is the best product on the market right now. I've done a lot of research. I've looked into a lot of different CBD products, and there's nothing like this. And the reason that I am standing behind this product 100%, and I want to share it with as many people as I can, not just the educational and informational pieces, but really where you're going to get your CBD if you feel like you're a candidate or somebody that you love and care about is a good candidate for a product. So this one, like I said, non-GMO. What I think that sets this one apart from anybody else is the delivery system. So I'm going to throw another word at you here. Bear with me, I'll explain it. It's called nano-liposomal technology. So all that means, sometimes it's called nano-enhanced or nano-emulsified, and all that means is nano is a size, it's a unit. And what they can do is they can take this oil extraction and they can continue to go through these sieves until it's this tiny, tiny, tiny little particle, so that it can be absorbed through the vessels underneath the tongue and get right into the system, right into your blood. Most oils are larger, and you have to, when you put it in your mouth, a very small percentage of it will actually be absorbed. The rest of it goes down through the digestive system, and you have to digest it. So it goes through the digestive system, goes through the liver, and then gets pushed out into the blood. And then at that point, the studies are showing it's about 6 to 10% absorption. So we're paying a high, high premium right now in this country, really throughout the entire world, for CBD. I want to know that when I'm taking CBD or I'm giving CBD to my mom and the people that I care the most about, that they're going to be using as much of it as they can, right? So this product right here is 97 to 100% absorption because of the delivery system. So that's a huge difference. It's a really, really big deal if you're going to be using CBD. So the difference is, again, 6 to 10% absorption versus 97 to 100% absorption. What I have written right there, phosphatidylcholine, all that means is once they make it really, really small, they have to stabilize it with something, and they're stabilizing it with something that's called a phospholipid. I don't really want to get into that because I've already thrown a lot of words at you. Trying to keep it as simple as I can. But I'll just show you this, the phospholipid. If you look all the way to the right there, the purple little heads with the little tails on there, that's the emulsification that they're using in this product. And in the middle there is a solution with the CBD oil in it. But what's really fascinating to know is that phospholipid, the head and the tails, is the same thing that our cells are made out of. So the outside of our cells are made of this phospholipid bilayer, and all that means is that when you get this into the body, it's going to combine with that cells and just dump the liquid right into the cell so that it can go and do what it's designed to do. And it's supporting cellular health. The cell membrane becomes healthier because of this product. So it's kind of has a couple of different really great qualities to it, where most other oils, and I'm not condemning any other oils. I think if people are out there taking CBD, I think you're doing a really, really good thing. As long as it's not genetically modified, and as long as it was grown under the sun in organic soil, then you're probably doing a really good thing. But most of them are dissolved in some kind of MCT or olive oil, which means you have to digest it. So you're going to get about a 6 to 10% absorption, which means you have to get more of it. You have to consume a lot more to really have those main benefits that we're talking about here. So this is the chart that the company sent me, not me directly, but this is the one that they use. And you can just see there the absorption, the delivery is 5 to 10-fold greater than anything else on the market. And they used half the amount. So in green there, you can see 5 milligrams of this nano enhanced oil versus 10 milligrams of another oil. And you can see the increase in absorption, and it's going to last in the body a little bit longer. So that's the information I have for you. I can't really quite tell at this point how long I went. Hopefully I kept it short for you. Really what I want to know, this is very educational based for me. I set out after I saw the transformation that my mom went through, which was huge for me. You know, just the fact that I had my mom back after 20 years of being lost in the system, I set myself on a mission to really figure out what happened and to tell people about it, because we need to know about this. We need to get the information out there. So this is educational based, and I have to make this disclaimer to you. So any of the information that I have provided for you today is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. It is, I want you guys to understand the information. I want you to ask questions. Don't take my word for anything that I said here today. I want you to go and look at the research yourself, because you can get lots of information out there. If you have any questions, please use me as a resource. I'm more than happy to help and answer any questions that you might have. And whoever sent this video to you also is a really great resources. If they sent it to you, I'm sure I'm somehow connected to them. So if they can't answer your questions, then they can send the questions directly to me. And if I don't have the answers, I will ask somebody who does. So we want to continue to use all the resources that we have. If you have any interest in knowing where you can get some of this oil, or you have questions about any oil that you're using, again, use me as a resource. We sell this retail for $149. You can get this online, or if you're in Santa Cruz or anywhere where there's a distributor, you can get it from them directly. You can get wholesale pricing on this also. So I immediately wanted to go to wholesale pricing. That's how I started this company, or getting into this organization or this company, is because I wanted to get wholesale so that I could help, you know, my family and my friends with it. And then I learned about the business opportunity, which is the next booming industry. So CBD, because of everything that we just talked about right now, is the next booming industry. It is huge. So many people are talking about it, and a lot of people are using it to their benefit. So if you have any interest in any of that at all, again, get with the person that sent you this information, or reach out to me, and I'd be happy to help you figure out how you can get your hands on some of this amazing CBD oil. So that's all I have to say, and I really appreciate your time in watching this video, and I wish you health and happiness.